Okay, hello everyone again. This is Chapter 3 of Educational Research, Fundamentals for the Consumer. We're going to talk just a little bit about lit reviews today. So how do you find the studies and background research once you have a research problem? General purpose, kind of a step-by-step how to do it. We're going to take a look at a real quick internet search on a topic and then look at kind of how do you tell a good literature review from a bad one, whether you're reading it or writing it yourself. So the main purpose of the literature review is to tie the particular study into the larger research that's already been done. So research is this evolving ocean of knowledge, and if you just take a single study isolated from everything else, it's not very powerful, not very trustworthy. It really doesn't do much. The power that comes through research is the body of research. You'll often see that quoted in papers. You'll see the body of research literature or threads within the research literature. It's very seldom a single study that makes a huge impact, but more the wave of the research as it's unfolding. So when you pick a topic, something you want to look into, the first part is to see what's already been done, to go and review the literature. First thing you want to do, and hopefully by the time you start conducting your literature review in Module 2, you'll have already had a pretty firm topic, and then get key terms. And by key terms, you may know some of them offhand. So say you're talking about, let's say you're talking about distance learning. What you have to realize is that may not be how it's classified on academic search engines. So it may be distance learning, it may be distance education, it may be internet education, virtual learning. There may be all kinds of terms, and maybe only some of these terms are actually used as key terms on a search database like ERIC. So what you need to use is start putting in the terms into ERIC, use the thesaurus, and you'll find the actual terms that the humans who are classifying study by study by study, which must be a very grueling job. I have a lot of respect for whoever's doing that. But they do it individually by hand, as opposed to some place like Google Scholar, which uses an algorithm to sort everything. In Google Scholar, it's not as important that you have the key terms, but still there's going to be keywords on each study, and Google Scholar even will use that. So finding out what terms relates to your topic is very important in the literature review. So ERIC, thesaurus, as I mentioned, and then beyond ERIC, certainly it helps to look at other databases too. Once you have those key terms, you go ahead and try to hit those terms on some of the major databases, ERIC, PsycInfo. You can use Academic Search Complete, which will let you search several academic engines. And Google Scholar is one that I particularly like, and I'll talk more about that later too. Once you've got your search engines, you actually conduct the searches, and we'll take a look again in just a bit on that. And finally, you somehow have to summarize. It looks like I missed a step in there. I had 1, 2, 3, 5. Maybe in the long version of this PowerPoint you can figure out what I missed there. But somehow you're going to, once you find the sources you want, you're going to have to decide whether or not you feel each source is worthwhile. So maybe your search turns up a list of 2,000 articles. You can put some delimiters in there like last 10 years, or maybe you only want related to middle school. Maybe you only want peer-reviewed journals. And then you narrow it down to something like 50 or 100. But even then, you're not going to use all those in your lit review. So you need to be able to just skim through the abstracts and figure out which ones really are going to be helpful for you in your literature review. And then once you do that, of course, you have to summarize. Most of the major searches, especially the academics, have some way of saving your search, so you can save all the abstracts. Google Scholar, I'm not aware of a feature like that. It's possible, it's out there, but you might just use a computer or pen and paper, whatever you're most comfortable with. What I tend to recommend for this class is a annotated bibliography. So whenever you do come across a source that you like, you copy down the citation in APA style. Again, you can use the Purdue OWL website, or you can use the APA manual, or any other way. Be careful of using an automatic system like RefWorks. You can use that if it helps, but a lot of the APA citations, even if it says APA style, is incorrect because, again, they're doing it by computer, by algorithm, and so they make assumptions that sometimes aren't right. So when it comes down to your final reference list, you should be doing an individual citation by citation check. So anyway, you get the citation and then just a few sentences about what the article's about, even if you haven't read it. Even if you've only read the abstract and maybe the conclusion, you should be able to get the gist of what the article's about. So just summarize that, and you'll end up with a nice long list of sources. I did that throughout grad school for any class that I took, and it was incredibly helpful towards the later stages and dissertation, thesis, if you have to write one of those, because you have all these sources that you've read before. Okay, again, these are, if you read the book, it's almost overwhelming, the amount of places that you can search. And really, you quickly start running into some repeats. If there are peer-reviewed studies that are recent and they're relevant to your research, you should be able to find them with one of the main search engines. You shouldn't have to use the 20, 30, 40, 100 that are out there, the meta crawlers, all the things that are mentioned in your books. So I think the book is trying to be helpful in citing several ways that you can get information, but don't by any means feel that you need to use all of those. You need to find a couple solid ones that are well reputed, and then stick with them for the most part. So for me, I use one internet source, which is Google Scholar. So that is much more trimmed down than just your typical Google search. And then 3 academic databases. Academic Search Complete will actually let you search several different databases. ERIC is kind of the standard for educational research, and PsycInfo is also good. ERIC had a problem with social security numbers being in some of their files. A couple years ago it was discovered, and so they took all of their files offline and then have been checking them one by one and re-uploading them, and I'm not sure where they're at in that process. You may run into that with ERIC if you try to track down specific articles, but I think the abstracts, for the most part, should be available now. One thing I like about Google Scholar is that you can do forward citations. So once you get a really good study, and assuming that it's in a top-tier peer-reviewed journal, or even a decent peer-reviewed journal, that is a key, because that's your anchor into that ocean of research that I talked about. Now you can go from that study, you can look at the sources that study cited. So you can look at the reference section and just kind of skim through. You'll probably find a couple other studies that are very relevant to your research. But at the same time, Google Scholar allows you to look at all the studies that have cited that study. So if you find a really good study, not only can you see what that study cited, but you can see the studies that cited the study you're reading. And so you can go in both directions. The ERIC, Scikit, any method, you can get the reference list, and then the forward citations, Google Scholar will allow you to do that. Okay, so here's a couple different places specifically you have access to at UNF. One is the EDF 6480 page at the library. One is the distance learning site at the library. And then one is the UNF list of databases that they subscribe to or have access to. And I'll put these so that you can follow the links. You don't have to write those down. Okay, so real quick search. Let's say I'm interested in increasing student motivation in online college mathematics classes. So this is actually your scenario assignment for this module. First I'm going to go to, let's see, try the UNF database here. Okay, and if you just type in UNF and library, I think it'll put you to the library, and there's maybe research tools. You can find the category that says databases, research databases. So now that I'm on library databases, there's all these different ones listed, as I mentioned. Several of them have a tutorial, so that's great. Let's go on down to, just take a look at ERIC. And if you're off campus, the reason I had to put that in is because I am off campus. Okay, so I'm looking at let's say distance learning is the first thing that I'm going to look for. And like I mentioned, I need to find out what terms are used. So I'm going into the thesaurus here. Let me type this, distance learning. And it said the term you entered could not be found. So it's good I know that now. If I had done searches on ERIC for distance learning, I wouldn't have come up with much. So let me try distance education. Oh, and there it is. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm also going to expand it. So this will give me everything distance learning, distance education, but then I also get to see some related terms. So I'm going to choose electronic learning, for example, and maybe virtual classroom, web-based instruction. Okay, and I'm going to add all those with an OR, which means I just want to find an article that has one of those in there. Okay, and now I'm going to do a separate search for, let's say, mathematics education. So I'm doing anything with distance learning and mathematics education. Now you could do the thesaurus several times, and then go to what's called the search history, and that'll let you click on any search that you've done recently, and you can combine them with search with and. So any search that you want to include, say the distance education one, the mathematics education, you can search with and once you select what you want, I guess I unclicked there. Okay, and we're going to do the search. Oh, here we go down here. Over on the left, you can see places where you can limit it to peer reviewed. It'll automatically update. You can limit the dates that you're selecting from and several other things. We're about out of, I have a 15-minute cap on this. So let me real quick go back to PowerPoint and let me show you the power of Google Scholar. So you can just put in your entire search topic, and you'll actually get some decent articles. So I'll finish off for there.